asking what books you read, have the federal government asking whether or not you know anybody in your organization that's going to run for political office. This is chilling stuff. This is very, very serious. Mr. Miller, do you accept the findings of the IG report?
We do, sir.
One of those findings is that groups were targeted. Do you accept that finding?
I would not characterize it as targeting, but
you can understand why others would believe, including the Inspector General, would believe that groups were targeted.
I think the groups that were put into the centralized grouping would have gone in. They would have gone in whether we had done the correct thing or were we using.
You've described the list of criteria being used to identify these groups as obnoxious. Correct?
Correct.
And it's not just Tea Party groups, right? It's not just conservative groups. In fact, there are religious organizations, are there not?
I don't know that, sir.
Are you not aware that there are religious organizations that were identified by the list of criteria that were formulated?
I'm actually unaware that there were, and I say that as though I don't know. I've looked at the list, but very quickly.
Are you aware that there were some Baptist church organizations that were identified for greater scrutiny? And
I was not aware of that, sir.
Who's Sarah Hall Ingram?
She is an executive at the Internal Revenue Service who does the Affordable Care Act work for us. That's
where she works now?
Yes, sir.
Where did she work during the period of time under question here, 2010 to 2012?
Someone has corrected my prior comment, I think. So 11 and 12, I think she was already working on Affordable Care Act.
So this video here is the IRS scandal hearings, and I've been watching a lot of these types of hearings, and every once in a while you find a nugget of truth.
At the time, she was
and
would she have known about this list of criteria that
you have to listen really carefully sometimes, in some of these hearings, and you watch these guys go back and forth. You watch the Republicans attack somebody, and then you watch the Democrats, try to provide cover. And we're going to move up a little bit here.
A couple of thousand folks.
Have you ever had that conversation with her?
No.
You've never asked her whether she knew?
So I'm not sure she was in that job at the time, sir.
So you identified her current position as one with the IRS oversight over the ACA and the regulations related to the ACA. Is that correct?
Correct.
Who appointed her?
I moved her into that job.
You've also said that in the context of the criteria list and what we're talking about today, that the IRS, quote, provided horrible service, unquote. Correct?
I think that's correct.
That's what you said earlier today. And the individual who was overseeing a portion of this and had responsibility for the provision of this, quote, horrible service now sits over the entity at the IRS that will determine whether or not people are complying with the rules of the ACA. Is that not correct?
No, I don't think it is, sir.
So Sarah Ingram is not at the IRS over control of the regulatory authority
of the ACA?
She was for
at most a period of this time, but we'd have to go back. I don't think your timeline works perfectly, sir. I'd have to go back and check. There may be a period of time when she was still in that job, but she had transferred
Mr.
over.
McDermott, in questioning you, said the IRS wouldn't have any access to medical records. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
So it would be unnecessary for them to gain access to medical records, correct?
I can't.
Be unnecessary?
I think so.
Isn't that how you described the questions and the information that the IRS folks were gaining through the criteria list? Unnecessary?
I think if are you talking about the letters that
I'm saying that there is a parallel here in the expansive nature of what the IRS has done. Would you care to recharacterize what the unnecessary word? Is it illegal what they have done?
It is absolutely not illegal.
It's not illegal what the IRS has done.
Here, so let me understand the question. What is your statement as to what is illegal?
Do you believe it is illegal for employees of the IRS to create lists to target individual groups and citizens in this country?
I think the Treasury Inspector General indicated that it might not be, but others will be able to tell that.
What do you believe?
I don't believe it is. I don't believe it should happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please don't get me wrong. It should not happen.
Thank you. Mr. Blumenauer is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity for our being able to listen to the witnesses and try and develop the record, and people putting forth their own ideas, their own questions, clarification. I think, Mr. Inspector General, that you have provided a tremendous service with the report, straightforward, identifying mismanagement, inappropriate activity, and I hope that people will be able to actually read the report, to reflect on it. I appreciate your being here, Mr. Miller. It's not the most comfortable. I appreciate that you, as a career civil servant, accepted responsibility even though you hadn't done these things directly, and resigned. I mean, it's an air of responsibility you don't often see in the political arena, I will say. But I am hopeful that we can continue to probe, to direct, to make sure that no political entity is subjected to inappropriate activity on behalf of the IRS. I appreciate some of my colleagues talking about efforts that we can do to clarify laws and regulations together to be able to make sure that there is less ambiguity and that there are better standards. But I also think at some point it will be interesting to reflect on Congress's role.
So right around this time here, we got this guy here. He's basically a liberal, and he's saying that the reason why specific groups and Tea Party groups and church groups were targeted was because Congress cut the budget to the IRS. Not that somebody in the IRS willfully targeted such groups, but he's making the excuse that it's all that. So now we're going to hear some truth.
This last week, and I really hope that there's an opportunity to think about how we support the integrity of the Internal Revenue Service, not just by making sure there isn't inappropriate or gross mismanagement, there is accountability, there is clarification, but we rely on it to be able to function. And Congress has slowly been starving the budget of the IRS at a time when each dollar spent on those employees gives the federal government about $214 in revenue. And for us to not make sure that it's adequately staffed, adequately trained, adequately equipped, invites shortcuts, makes it harder to have the oversight and the accountability, and harder for overall performance. I think it's inexcusable to cross the line. I think it's important that we bear down, we understand, we make sure it doesn't happen again. But I also think as the Congress has made the code more and more complex, given the IRS fewer and fewer resources to administer it, make it difficult to train, I think it undermines the ability to take a complex entity that relies on self-reporting and people having confidence in it. And I'm hopeful that this isn't something that we slide past. I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your interest in simplifying and reforming the code, but I also hope that we look at the task they've been given, the budget they've been given, and think a little bit about maybe a rate of return that would more than pay for itself if we invested in training, in management, and having more than 150 people to deal with the avalanche of these applications. I guess that wasn't so much a question, but it is something that occurred to me, and I know, Mr. Miller, you had referenced the stress that that group is on and how hard it is to keep track. And at some point, if you would provide to the committee, not putting you on the spot now, but some reflections on what it would take to do this right, I think it would be a valuable part of the committee record going forward, because we all want it to have integrity, we want it done right, we want to treat our employees and the taxpayers properly.
Thank you. Mr. Buchanan's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Miller, I want to talk a little about the culture of the organization. I was looking at the note, your bio, 90,000 employees, $12 billion budget. You've been there 25 years. I'm concerned, and I guess to start off, we've got a mission statement there. I'm very concerned about the breadth and the depth of maybe what's going on. I think a lot of employees probably do a good job, but I've been a person that's been in business 30 years and run larger organizations. So you've got a mission statement in terms of talking about working for the American people, doing what's right, playing by the rules. Is that something that's internalized at the IRS, or is that just something on a website?
So I believe, Congressman, it's internalized, and the vast majority of our folk are hardworking, incredibly honest people. I'm going to tell you, and you guys should hear, that as these discussions occur, it's damaging to the morale of those people. It's probably ultimately damaging to the sense of voluntary compliance, which underlies our entire tax system.
Well, let me just say, I think.
Did you just catch that? Voluntary compliance that underlies our entire tax system. This is.
I think we need to get to the bottom of it.
This is very critical for us to understand, because there was a man by the name of Irwin Schiff. He was the father to Peter Schiff, who is a well-known economist. You see him on most of the major business networks, and you also see him from time to time on InfoWars and other type programs. And what Irwin Schiff was trying to basically tell people was that the IRS is really, income tax is really a voluntary situation. In fact, he wrote books on it, and the government charged him with certain crimes or whatever, and they jailed him, and I think it was last year Mr. Schiff died while in prison of cancer. So again, this guy here, you're seeing an exchange between a Republican member of the House and the former IRS commissioner, and he just came right out and said, first he said the morale, the morale of the people in the IRS. Well, the morale of the people of the IRS is low because they got caught. And these are the things you look for in these hearings. I've watched all the hearings on Holder, and I've watched the hearings on the Hillary email and all this stuff, and you actually can learn a lot what really goes on in Washington just by hearing it from their own mouths. So I hope you like the video, and I hope you subscribe and go ahead and leave some comments. So this is Renaissance Man.
That work with you, Lois Lehner and Sarah Ingram.